Hello, everybody, and welcome from wherever you're joining from. My name is Jeanette. I'm with Reading Horizons, and I'd like to welcome you to our No More Guessing Strategies for Confident, Effective Reading Instruction webinar. We have Dr. Paul Black with us today, who is a practicing school psychologist. So welcome, Paul. We're happy to have you. And we have Stacy Hurst, who is our Literacy Talks podcast host and is also a professor of reading at Southern Utah University. Stay tuned for a special giveaway that we're going to be offering to everybody towards the end of the session. We're going to go for about 30 minutes, and then we will stay on a little bit longer for any Q&A. But we will be giving everybody free access to Reading Horizons Discovery, which you're going to see a lot about today in this webinar at the end of the session, and you can use it for the entire school year 2025-26 for free, just as a thank you gift from us to you so that you can become familiar with it and see if you like teaching using the Reading Horizons method. So I think that's all that I've got for my introduction. So I'm going to turn it over to Paul and Stacy, and have a great session.
Thank you, Jeanette. Again, I'm Paul Black. I'm a school psychologist. I've been using Reading Horizons for the last 10 years, and I oversee our preschool. So if a student comes in for preschool with concerns, I do the evaluation. And we look for things that might lead to reading difficulties. And I also go all the way up to our alternative high school. So we have students who are eligible for a free and appropriate education up until they're 21. And those are my students as well. And I've used Reading Horizons or applied that in both of those settings and everything in between. So I'm really excited to be able to chat with you a little bit about a curriculum that I love and use. It is a science-based what I call the neuroscience of reading based curriculum that is structured literacy at its best, and it is based on the science of reading. Orton Gillingham principles. It's explicit, systematic, sequential, and a multimodal framework, and it also has a unique marking system too involved. And maybe you want to tell us a little bit more about that marking system, Stacy.
Yeah, I am happy to. And I have used this method, by the way, for over 20 years. I used it in my first grade classroom and any other setting you can imagine. And I will be honest, when I first saw the marking system, I was a little bit nervous about what those markings would mean for my students. But as Paul goes through the method, you will see that they really help students analyze words in ways that get them in their long-term memory and also helps them as a scaffold for when they come to a word they don't know. So that was my first experience with it. I'm excited for you to hear about this method. So Paul, I'll let you keep going.
Okay, and I concur. I mean, it was at first I was like, what is this marking system? But afterwards, it's like, wow, it's a really, really powerful tool for teachers. So it's systematic and cumulative instruction. It follows the gradual release of design, the I do, we do, then you do method. We start with a review of previous lessons. It only takes about 5 minutes, but this activates that prior knowledge so that when I get into my instruction, I can build on with what they had already learned. From there, we move into dictation. And this is a multisensory approach that really establishes and helps the student connect with the instruction. I like to refer to it as going from abstract to concrete. And afterwards, we have what is so important is transfer. And this is something when I first found Reading Horizons that was missing from nearly all of the curriculums that we were looking at. And the frustrating part was I would have students that would do good in the curriculum, but when we brought them to the test, like the end of level tests or the tests outside of the curriculum, their scores would be flat. And we discovered that they're not generalizing those skills because there wasn't that focus on transfer activities. And then, of course, we have extended transfer and differentiation for our students of all ability levels.
Yeah, and you know what, Paul, I would say to notice about this design that we are giving instruction, explicit instruction, as we know that science says that students benefit from. But the majority of the time is spent with students applying what they're learning because we need to get that in their long-term memory. So reading is automatic. And that is really what it takes, a lot of practice with the right kind of feedback for students to recognize words automatically. So these may seem simple on a screen, but they're really important skills.
Well, and that automatic piece, that makes me think of Scarborough's reading rope and the curriculum. Our curriculum focuses on that lower strand, but with the goal of making it automatic so automaticity happens, so it becomes automatic. Does that sound right?
Yeah, well said. This is what I spend my days as a professor introducing to my students is this infographic about how reading comes together, right, to become automatic and fluent so we can comprehend what we're reading. And again, I just want to point out, I heard recently, and I love this, that Scarborough's reading rope is tethered to language, whether that's written or verbal, right? So we are addressing with that lower strand, we are starting with the sounds and we're connecting the spellings, but it's all anchored in language. So getting a student to read proficiently requires focusing on that. We're not going to not address the upper strands at the same time. One other thing I'd like to point out about this graphic is that it happens over time, right? And that's important too as we consider how reading develops for our students.
And I love the language piece. Language, my speech and language pathologist tells me all the time, language is the artery through which all learning flows. And, I look at my kindergartners or my 3 to 5 year olds, and I get asked all the time, how can you tell if there is a probability that they'll struggle with reading? Well, it all comes back to language. And to address more of that, we actually have phonological awareness as a very robust part of our kindergarten program as well. And so they're going to get that part of Scarborough's reading rope. And it has worked so well, and it's so salient to my preschool students that we've actually adapted that to our preschool curriculum so they get more robust phonological awareness, all with the goal in mind to prime their brains to be able to do phonemic awareness and to be able to decode and read words with automaticity. It's fantastic. Um, Next, you'll see our phonological awareness piece, which will build into spelling and decoding and then sight recognition. Our core skills, this is a great overview of how we progress from simple to more complex. We begin with letter instruction. From letter instruction, we start introducing vowels. And then we call it the slide. And what we're going to do is we're going to pair a consonant with a vowel and then roll on a hard consonant at the end to produce a word, to build a word. This is also where we introduce our first marking system, the X. And again, we're trying to make things that seem abstract to a student be more concrete. When I try and tell a student what a syllable is, and I'll say a word like banana. And in the old days, we used to clap, banana, right? How many syllables does it have? Kids would raise their hand, 13, 45, 150. They just couldn't grasp it. But when I mark an X, that's one vowel, that's one syllable. Again, we're taking the abstract and making it concrete. And for my compensators that are smart students but still aren't grasping the concept and are just memorizing, we introduce nonsense words that are marked with a star at the beginning of the word to identify that they are a nonsense word and not to be remembered. But it pulls out or pushes to the side those compensatory strategies so I know if they're really grasping the concepts that I'm asking them to teach. Now, from there, we move on to 5 phonetic skills and 2 decoding skills. And this is how we decode words. Phonetic skill number 1 is I mark my vowel. If I have a consonant at the end of the word, it proves the vowel before it short. That's why the A in bag is short, ah. Phonetic skill number 2 is similar. When I have 2 consonants that follow a vowel, it proves the vowel before it short as well. Phonetic skill number 3, when one vowel stands alone, as in the E and B, that vowel is long. Phonetic skill number 4, When I have a sneaky E or a silent E at the end of the word, I draw a line through it because I want my students to see and understand at a very concrete level that that's not a working vowel. But that silent E proves the vowel before it short. And finally, phonetic skill number 5, when I have two specific adjacent vowels, the second vowel is silent and the first vowel is long. Did I cover that adequately, Stacy?
Yeah, you did a great job. I was just thinking about how complex English is. And we know vowel sounds especially, right? Because they can spell so many different sounds. So when something as simple as marking the X helps us to build to the fact that it's actually the letters after the vowel that determine the sound of the vowel. And students will learn all about that as we go through the 5 phonetic skills, um, which help us to know whether a vowel is long or short. Now, there are other vowel sounds that are neither long nor short, and those are covered in the program too. But these 5 phonetic skills are a good place to start, so we can build to multisyllabic words.
And I remember the early days when I was in college as a teacher aide, and kids would ask me why this vowel is the way it is or why this word sounds the way it is. And I'd say, it's just because. And, I don't know, but now I know, right? And it takes a lot of the frustration, one, out of the teacher, like, I don't know, English is ridiculous, too. And also a lot of the frustration out of the student because now they understand, right? Now they can decode the code. So for multisyllabic words, we have two decoding skills. If I have one consonant between two vowels, that one consonant will move with the next syllable. If I have two consonants between two vowels, those consonants will split. Let me show you what that looks like. And with our marking system, we compare it to a road. You start at the bottom left-hand corner of the word and you go from left to right because that's how we read, that's how we write. You mark the vowels first, and then you come up and around the word and mark what follows the vowel and determine whether that vowel is short or long. So for example, I do this with all my kids. We move from the word motel, we break it down to its most simple, basic form, M-O. Why is the O long and not short? Well, phonetic skill number 3 says when one vowel stands alone, it's long. So what happens when I add the T? Well, that guardian consonant proves the vowel before it's short. So mo turns into mot. And what happens when I add the silent E at the end? Well, it's still only a single syllable word, and that E proves the vowel before it long. So now I have the word motel. Let's break that up into two. One consonant will move with the next syllable, and we'll decode that one as well. So for example, one will run is what I often say, or one will move with the next syllable. Now, I know the O is long because of phonetic skill number 3. I know the E is short because it has a guardian consonant and proves the vowel short. The word is motel. Now, decoding skill number 2, when I have two consonants between two vowels, those will split. I know why the A is short because it has a consonant that follows it, a guardian consonant. I know why the U is short because it also has a guardian consonant following the vowel. The word is campus. Now, this blew me away when I saw these and how applicable this was for students. And I would actually, in high school, my classes on Fun Friday, we would take around a dictionary, open it up, point to a random word, and decode that word. And I had students that had failed at reading for years and years and years and years, all of a sudden light up and say, I know it. I know how to do this now. I get it. And that's fun. That's fun for me. And I guess I bet it's fun for the teachers that you teach how to teach, Stacy.
Yeah, it makes this system really easy for them to understand English, the English structure of the English language too. And who knew that multisyllabic words could be so easy to handle? We've all seen so many kids get to what they think is a big word and just shut down. But this gives them the skills to be able to do that. And we do teach just two, we actually teach 3 ways to split a word into syllables. And other programs you notice will make it really arduous, this process, and do 6 different ways. And
Um,
this just makes it pretty simple. So,
And it has to be simple. And it has to help teachers be more effective teachers and make their life easier too. And I think we ask those questions with any kind of curriculum adjustments that we ever make to the curriculum. So next, one of the most important parts that's often neglected is our transfer to reading. We want our students to be able to connect to the text at the word, and then at the sentence, and then at the text level. We want it to be able to be generalized. I want my students to not only make progress in the curriculum, but make progress in reading. So at those end of level tests, those benchmark tests, and all the tests in between that shows us how a student is progressing, I want that to be reflected in their reading ability. And this really, really helps with that.
Yeah, and this, I don't think we can overstate how important this part is. And we know that students who are, we call it doing the thing, right? Reading, applying the skills that we're teaching them, are more likely to become proficient readers. And some students require a lot more practice with those. So we do start with decodable text, and we have text that becomes less decodable over time too. So students are equipped to read any text that they encounter. So yeah, this
And,
part's critical.
and how many decodable readers do we have for our lessons now?
You know, we have at least one for every lesson in the form of a book, but we also have passages, as you're seeing on the screen here, and sentences. So, like you mentioned, on all levels. So, words, sentence, we have phrases in some cases, and passages, and then also books.
You know, before my school transitioned to Reading Horizons, we had decodable readers, but it's such a small sample of them. We used to joke that the transfer activity became behavior hour because our students would get
Yeah.
bored. They'd be like, oh, I have to read this again. So to have a wide variety of engaging decodable readers to choose from is huge. It's huge for students. It's great for my classroom environments too.
Yeah, and of course, the end goal is to read any type of text,
Yep.
right? But if we start with more controlled, like what we refer to as decodable text, then it's less likely to overwhelm a student and their brain recognizes the patterns they need to. And then you keep bringing up the word generalized in the spirit of being a true school psychologist, because that's what we want. We want this information to become generalized. So no matter where they see that word, whether it's in decodable text or not, or a pattern, a word that has a similar pattern, that they'll be able to recognize it automatically. We call
Yeah.
that graphic mapping, needs to happen in the brain, but we do that by providing them with a lot of opportunities to apply what we're learning with feedback so they're accurate with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what good is it if they can only perform in isolation? If a student can only become good at the curriculum, that curriculum goes away really quick. And actually, in my school district, I mean, every 3 or 4 years, we're getting new curriculums. I mean, they don't last very long. So that Reading Horizons has lasted 10 years, going on our 11th year. I mean,
Wow.
it's just a
Yeah.
testament that says this is very teacher friendly and it works. It takes those skills from being able to be performed in isolation to be able to be generalized. Uh,
And do you know what the word I think of is empowered? As I
yeah,
mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, I have used this method for over 20 years
yeah,
in every possible instructional setting. And the materials around the method have changed, right? Reading Horizons is always improving what they're offering. And think you'll see shortly how we've made it easier for teachers. But also, just knowing that method empowers me as a teacher so that I can empower my students as readers. And the materials really help to do that too.
yeah. My research focuses on mental health and literacy. And parents love Reading Horizons for a lot of reasons. A big one is they get to see their child feel success or have access to success and how that changes their mindset towards school, how they feel about school, how they feel about themselves is huge. So this goes so far beyond just, decoding and reading. One other piece that really helps teachers is our Reading Horizons Discovery Live. This helps teachers be able to teach. All that prep work that you're doing, all that studying in the manual that you're doing, all that lesson creation that you're putting forth, we'll do all of that. That's all online, it's all digital, and you can take what's on your lesson and you can beam it up to the board. You can transfer it up to the board and go through the lesson just like that. So it makes lesson prep, which might have taken 45 minutes to an hour for a 30-minute lesson. It takes it down to like 5 minutes. So what this does is the teacher is now able to interact and teach the kiddos. And I've never had a student come back to me and say, Mr. Black or Dr. Black, thank you for choosing that curriculum, right? But I have had students come back to me and says, thank you for helping me learn how to read. Thank you for spending time with me. And that is what Reading Horizons and Reading Horizons Discovery Live does for teachers. You mentioned empower. And I think that's a great way to put it. How have your teachers that you're training reacted to these kinds of tools?
Well, that's the great thing. Initially, when I introduced the method to them, we just use whiteboards and markers, and it really opens their eyes to the structure of English. But then in a subsequent course, they actually tutor with the method. And at that point, we do use the materials. And I will say there is a script that is provided with them. Now, for my pre-service teachers, that is invaluable because they don't quite have a proficiency with the language that we use when we're teaching reading. So it's a great scaffold for them. I've seen it be helpful for new teachers, teachers new to the program. I know the method so well now that I don't even need a manual near me. I
Yeah.
can just go, other than actually there are some really good supports that I do use. But there are reteach lessons that you'll have access to, as Jeanette mentioned, and what we call the toolkits, which have so many activities and opportunities to differentiate for your students too. So really, they're resources at your fingertips.
It's fantastic, helping teachers do what they were trained to do, teach. Um, I mentioned that my school district, we've been with Reading Horizons for over 10 years. And this is why they are unique. They check all the boxes when it comes to the science of reading or evidence-based instruction. The versatility in the instructional modalities that they're able to employ that makes the job of a teacher less stressful, less hectic. And when we come in and we do a training for teachers on Reading Horizons, it's by a teacher that uses Reading Horizons. It's not somebody. My first training was from a guy that just graduated high school that was working at Home Depot the previous like 5 years. No offense to Home Depot, they just don't know a lot about reading. No, when we go in, you get a teacher that uses it. But finally, we love the people. We love that when we call Reading Horizons, the chances are we're going to talk to an educator that understands literacy, that understands being in a classroom, that's responsive, that might be near where we're teaching in general. And that's kind of the secret sauce, passionate literacy experts that also are teachers, trying to help the lives of students through literacy and help our teachers be more effective and empowered teachers. Anything you'd like to add to that, Stacy?
Well, as I mentioned, I taught with this method for many years. And then I actually, before I started teaching at the university level, I worked full time for Reading Horizons. And I never would have guessed that I would have left the classroom to work for a company. And I wouldn't have, not for any other company, because the passion and the mission at Reading Horizons is so important. And they don't just say the words, they mean it. So
Yeah.
there are lots of supports for teachers a phone call, fingertips, and yeah, they really know what they're doing.
And what did Reading Horizons, I know the answer to this, but it'd be great for others to hear. What did implementing Reading Horizons at your school that you were teaching at and working at, what did it do for their literacy scores?
Oh, so many. And so much, I should say. And if I had the foresight at the time, I would have kept all the data and written it in a research article, but we were just trying to do our best, right? We were employing the MTSS model. And at my school and in my district, especially after 3 years and then again at 5, we did a deep dive into this and realized that our referrals to special ed had decreased significantly because we were teaching this in the general classroom. So all of our students were receiving this instruction in kindergarten, first, second, and into third grade. And of course, along with that information that's a little more quantitative, I have scads and scads of anecdotal stories about how this empowers students to be able to learn how to read. And I still tutor because I have to do the thing. And I'm using this method and seeing the same things with the students I'm tutoring currently. So I could talk about that for a whole webinar by itself, but nobody really wants to hear that.
I want to hear that. But same experience. My referrals have decreased significantly since we implemented Reading Horizons. As a school psychologist involved in Tier 2 intervention and Tier 3 evaluation, it's music to my ears. So Reading Horizons, makes my life as a school psychologist easier, just like it makes the lives of teachers easier because they get to teach. Okay. Last but not least, Jeanette, I think there is a wonderful offer for our teachers that are joining us.
Yes, just scan the QR code that you see on your screen, or you can type in your browser readinghorizons.com/free. That'll take you to our landing page, and it's a very quick and easy sign up process. No strings attached, just need an account to log in. And once you're in there, you will have access to the entire year's curriculum, everything that Stacy and Paul showed you today, the units, the lessons, all of the materials, including the core four with the phonemic awareness warm-ups all the way through to those transfer activities. And also I put the bookmark that has a little cheat sheet for the decoding skills and the phonetic skills in the chat. And so go ahead and sign up for your free access, and then you'll actually get enrolled into an email sequence that will kind of guide you through using the program step by step so you can become familiar with it. And of course, as Stacy and Paul said, we're always here, always available to help you at any time. So you'll have access to our help center and emails and phone numbers and things that you can use to contact us as you give this a try. We do have a couple questions. I think if people want to hang on, we can maybe answer some of the specific questions that they put in the chat and the Q&A. So let's start with, how does this program address dyslexia and dyslexia screenings? I think.
Oh, that's my jam right there. So it depends on the state that you live in. This isn't a dyslexia screener per se. So the assessments that we have show me the markers for dyslexia really early. But the best screener that I have for dyslexia, and it's also free, is family history. I know if there is a family history of reading difficulties, there's up to a 50% probability that their child will struggle with reading. So I shake that family tree and see what falls out. And that allows me to start early intervention. So if somebody comes to me with preschool and the mom or dad says, yeah, I struggled in school, I struggled with reading, we're going to start interventions immediately because those are going to benefit them whether they're dyslexic or not. The wait to fail approach, where I'm going to wait and see until second or third grade to see how fluent they are, I've missed a window of opportunity that is critical. So you could say that the intervention that I do with and the assessments that are involved with Reading Horizons, I would consider that like a level 1 screener, where I can pull the data out and say I'm concerned enough to go to a level 2 screener. And then we have assessments like the TOD, the Test of Dyslexia, the FAR. We have the Wyatt, the KTA, and a number of state-specific dyslexia screeners that we would use from there. But this will show me the red flags if there is a concern that I would have that would make me want to initiate interventions for a student with potential dyslexia.
Yeah, and when we're talking about interventions, and I've taught many students that have had either a diagnosis of dyslexia or characteristics of it. And I would say the difference is it's the same method. You would teach the same skills. The difference could be on the intensity, right? Maybe you slow down for some students, give them a lot more practice, and it will take them time. One of my favorite success stories, it's not my success story, but a success story of somebody who's used the method, and he was an adult learner who had dyslexia, struggled with reading his whole life. And he, after having this method instruction with him for a long time, he doesn't even show up as dyslexic on the screeners anymore. The biggest thing he needs is just more time to read, but he is able to read proficiently. So, and
Okay.
Jeanette, we have some other questions I noticed.
I was typing, some people would like a certificate of participation or completion. I'm happy to send those to you, but I'll do it by request. So if you put it in the chat, we'll have a record of it. I can send it, or you can reply to the email tomorrow and we'll send it that way. And we do have another question that says, how do you handle exceptions or irregularly spelled and or pronounced words? For example, have, give, find, gold, cabin.
Yeah, and I love that. Actually, when that question was asked, I put it up on my screen and been looking forward to answering it. So, yes, we do. We do address all of those. In fact, the when I made reference to the two decoding skills, which helps students to know how to break most words into syllables and then they can decode them syllable by syllable if they need to. I mentioned a third, and that is, we call it the Robin rule. But it is to move the syllable line, right? And if you're familiar with a concept called the set for variability, which is again something in our brain that allows us to be flexible with the pronunciation of words, then that facilitates that. So we definitely teach that. We also teach concepts like in English, we can't end a word with V or J. And then we teach students the spelling skills that surround that. We do teach, we call them vowel families, IND, ILD. So yes, those are covered as well. What Paul has shared with you today is just a very big overview, but there is much more that is addressed in the method too. So thank you for asking that question.
All right. I think that's the extent of the questions. Thank you for putting your names in the chat. If you'd like a certificate, I think that's it. We have some hands raised, but we really have to take the questions in the chat. So I don't see any more. Thank you, Dr. Paul and Stacy, for being so kind as to present for us today. Don't worry if you don't have time now to put your name in the chat for the certificate. Just reply to the email that we send tomorrow and we'll make sure that you get it. All right, so everybody have a great day. Bye.